Lily had grown used to the clang of silverware, the hum of the coffee machine, and the steady rhythm of footsteps across the greasy diner floor. But today, even those familiar sounds felt like noise pressing down on her. Her apron was already stained, her ponytail sagged, and her smile, once bright and easy, had thinned to a mechanical curve. Every plate she carried, every fake laugh she gave to avoid conflict, added to a weight she couldn't shake off. The morning rush had come and gone, leaving only the smell of burnt toast and a few lingering regulars. Lily wiped down the counter, glancing out the window at the same empty street she saw every day. At 26, she felt decades older. This job wasn't just work, it was her shield, her survival. She took double shifts, not for herself, but for her younger brother studying out of state. She'd never told anyone. It didn't matter. No one really asked. She thought of herself as a ghost with good manners, always present, always polite, and always unseen. The bell above the door jingled softly. She didn't have to look up to know who it was. The old man came in every Tuesday and Thursday. He sat at the corner booth, always by the window, always alone. He barely spoke, just nodded, ordered black coffee and toast, and tipped exactly $1. Not more, not less. Some of the waitresses made fun of him, but Lily didn't mind. At least he was consistent. As she poured his coffee, she studied him for a moment. He was frail, with deep creases in his face, like someone who had spent too much time thinking and not enough talking. His eyes, though, were still sharp, watchful even. He met her gaze briefly, then looked away. Back at the counter, Lily sat down for a second. Her feet throbbed. Her mind drifted to bills, to-do lists, and the never-ending stretch of sameness that her life had become. She could feel herself drifting, like she was in her own body, but not really living in it. Lunch came and went. She smiled, served, and got stiffed again on a check from a table of teenagers. Her boss made a snide comment about being quicker. It was just another day. Then, as she went to clear the old man's table, she saw he'd left early. Nothing new. Except this time, something was different. He'd left his usual $1 on the table, but instead of it being tucked under the saucer, it sat neatly in the center of the plate, alone. Something about it struck her as odd. Maybe it was the way it looked too clean, too intentional. Without really thinking, Lily slipped it into her apron pocket. Not because of the money, it was just $1, but because, for some reason, it felt like it meant something. The next morning, Lily didn't expect anything different. Same shoes, same ache in her lower back, same flavorless coffee from the diner's machine. But as she pulled her apron out of her locker, the folded up $1 she'd tucked in the pocket fell to the floor. She stared at it for a moment, oddly hesitant to pick it up. What was it about this single bill that had settled so heavily in her mind? With a sigh, she unfolded it and, her breath caught. Inside, carefully folded between the creases, was a small, handwritten note. Just 4 words. "You looked so tired." She sat down slowly on the bench, the note trembling in her hands. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't mocking. In fact, it was the first time in as long as she could remember that someone had noticed her, really seen her. The words weren't grand or poetic. They were simple, honest, and in that honesty, something stirred in her. That day at work, she couldn't focus. Her mind kept drifting back to the note. She kept asking herself the same question. Why did he write it? Why that day? Had she looked worse than usual? Later that afternoon, as the lull between lunch and dinner settled in, she saw him again. The old man, same booth, same window. But today, she brought his coffee with a different kind of awareness. She placed the cup down gently and sat across from him without asking. He looked surprised at first, then gave a faint nod, as if he'd been expecting her. She didn't speak right away, neither did he. After a long pause, she asked, barely above a whisper, "Why did you write that?" He didn't pretend not to know what she meant. Instead, he looked down at his hands, weathered and trembling, and said, "Because I've been tired before, too." He went on to tell her, a little, not much, but just enough, that he'd lost his wife the year before, that Tuesdays and Thursdays used to be their breakfast days, and that sitting in the booth helped him pretend, for just a moment, that not everything was gone. Lily listened, silent, feeling his words settle like soft rain over her own pain. Before she stood up to return to work, she reached into her apron and pulled out a crisp $1 from her tips, one of the few she'd made that day. Without a word, she placed it on his plate and gave a tired but genuine smile. He looked at her, puzzled. She leaned in and said, "Your coffee's on me today." Then she walked away before he could say anything. Later that night, as she closed up the diner, she thought about that moment. It had started as a joker waitress tipping a customer, but somehow it had become something else. Something quiet and kind. A tiny rebellion against the numbness she felt every day. And for the first time in months, Lily didn't feel like a ghost. The next Tuesday, Lily found an envelope on the counter with her name written in unsteady cursive. It had no stamp, no return address, just her name. Inside was a letter. Not long, but every word felt like a stone dropping into still water, sending ripples she wasn't ready for. He wrote about his wife, Margaret, about how she had once been a waitress too, how she used to come home with sore feet and funny stories, and how he'd never truly appreciated what those days cost her until they were gone. He told Lily that watching her reminded him of Margaret, of her strength, her stubbornness, her quiet kindness. But then came the part that made her hands tremble. He wrote that on the day she left the dollar tip, he had been planning to leave a final note of his own. He hadn't told anyone, but he had nothing left, no family, no purpose, just an echo of a life. The grief had hollowed him out, and the loneliness had started whispering dark things. But that moment, her unexpected gesture made something shift. He ended with this: "You didn't know you were saving someone, but you did. And now, maybe it's time to save yourself too." Lily sat with the letter in her lap for a long time. The diner bustled around her, but it all felt far away. Tears came slowly, quietly, not from sadness, but from the release of a burden she hadn't realized she'd been carrying for years. She had been pouring herself into everyone else, believing her life was small and forgettable. But now, this man, this stranger, had told her the truth. Her own heart had forgotten. She mattered, not because of what she did or how much she gave, but because her presence, her humanity, could spark something in someone else. That night, she walked home with her head a little higher. The streetlights looked softer, the air felt kinder. She called her brother just to hear his voice, and for the first time, she talked about herself. In the weeks that followed, she started drawing again, something she hadn't done since high school. She signed up for a community art class, and every Tuesday and Thursday, she still served coffee to the old man, who now sat across from her during her breaks, telling stories he once kept locked away. They never spoke of the note again. They didn't have to. What passed between them wasn't about debt or gratitude. It was about the fragile, invisible thread that ties people together when they least expect it. And all of it began with one tired waitress, a folded dollar, and a man who thought his story had ended. Sometimes we wait for grand moments to change our lives, but what if the real turning points are quiet, tucked inside ordinary days and small, unexpected gestures? Lily's story reminds us that kindness doesn't need an audience to matter. It just needs to be real. $1, one note, one life scene. In the end, it was Auntie about the tip. It was about being reminded that we are never as invisible as we fear, and never as alone as we think. If this story touched you, consider liking, sharing, or commenting your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more tales like this.